Welcome to Treon's Realm. Today we're going to be doing a review on the HORI Split Pad Pro, as well as the HORI Split Pad Compact for the Nintendo Switch. Now the Joy-Cons for the system work great, but there are some issues that people run into with them, specifically stick drift. Also, their size can be an encumbrance for a lot of people. Just little things here and there that if you're playing it primarily handheld, I feel like some people might want a better option for long-term play with the system. Because I have found that the more that you play in handheld, the higher the likelihood that you'll run into stick drift, because there's a lot of games out there that put a lot of undue stress on them. Now, while you can replace the sticks yourself, I have found that if you're playing primarily handheld, the better option might be a different type of controller. Now, a pretty good option I found recently that I actually personally enjoy a lot is the HORI Split Pad Pro. As you can see, these are much larger. They use regular sticks on them. There are back triggers on them. It is programmable and it has the ability to reassign button presses to the back trigger, as well as enable turbo mode. Now, weight-wise, these are considerably lighter feeling than the Joy-Cons or a regular controller, and the main reason for that is because there's a lot of features that are not here in these controllers. As I mentioned before, these are only for handheld mode. You cannot use these without an adapter up on the TV. Now, their size would be a little bit bulky in terms of casing, so you may want to have an additional bag or something to throw them into and keep your Joy-Cons on hand in your standard case. Now, the reason for their lighter weight is because there are a lot of functions that are not present here. Specifically, the gyroscopic aiming, that is not there. You do not have the IR camera like you would on the normal Joy-Con. The accelerometer is no longer there. There is no form of rumble, and NFC is not able to be used on these. There is no NFC scanner. So these are pretty bare bone in terms of the additional functions of the system. But what you lose out in additional functions, you gain quite a bit if you're playing primarily in handheld mode. Now, when you put them in, they lock in nice and tight. And if I'm being honest, if you've ever held a Steam Deck, this actually makes the Switch feel much more form factor wise like the Steam Deck. Now, they can be charged on their corresponding dock, but one thing to keep in mind is that the Switch OLED dock is a little bit larger than the standard Switch. So while you can charge the Switch OLED on either dock, if you have a standard Switch and you happen to have two different docks in the house, you will not be able to fit this Switch with these on it into this dock here. I will show you. And just like the Joy-Cons, there are two buttons here on the back. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit. It'll fit just fine over here, but the standard V1 or V2 Switch will not fit with the split pads onto an OLED dock. That may not be a normal occurrence for most people, but I figure I would throw it in there so that you know. As I said, for a person who's playing this primarily on the go as a handheld, these are actually really nice. I have not run into any problems with stick drift. I have run into, though, and this is the case with my wife, she plays a lot of Katamari Damacy for the Switch, and I will say that there is a little bit of dust that has been forming from the stick, but that could be that she tends to play a little rough with that game because you have to use both sticks, but so far they've been holding up pretty well. They have a nice little rubber top here, so you got a nice grip when playing. Another thing that I happen to like about it is that the buttons themselves, I know a lot of people will give me crap about this, but I don't particularly care for the clicky sound of the buttons. It doesn't bother me personally, but when I'm at night and say I'm laying next to my wife and I'm playing a game, that clickiness can be a little annoying. Now, as far as I can tell, these use more of a membrane style button. So they're much quieter when you're playing, and I personally find that a bit more comfortable. It could be that I'm a little bit more old school, but I do find that very comfortable, and the reaction time works just fine, just like the standards. Now, these additional buttons here, they all are kind of a rubber membrane, but they feel great and they work great. HORI is officially licensed by Nintendo. They have made a lot of officially licensed controllers for Nintendo in the past. For example, the rather rare and desirable Game Boy Player controller that was made for the GameCube, that was made by them, and it feels pretty close, if not spot on, to the original Super Nintendo style controller. And when it comes to these controllers, this feels great. It feels kind of like an official controller that would have been put out by Nintendo, because for all intents and purposes, HORI is essentially a, Nintendo close to a second party when it comes to their controllers. While these are nice, they are a little big. So if you have smaller hands or you're more used to the Joy-Con size, there is another option, the HORI Split Pad Compact. And as you can see right here, these are a bit smaller in size, and their form factor is more in line with the Joy-Cons. Now, much like the other, this uses the same style of buttons. The sticks are a little bit smaller. They feel more in line with the Joy-Con. Now, they do have a grip to them, and they have the two back buttons as well. Very comfortable and real nice for handheld play. Now, the plus and minus, they are more clicky, unlike these, which are a little bit more mushy. So they feel more in line with the Joy-Con version of those buttons. Now, I think that the compact has also been adjusted so that you can use on the other dock, which is a nice consideration that they went back and improved the design a little bit more so that it would fit just fine on the dock there. It doesn't bother me as much with these because these were actually crafted and created before the OLED was even a thing. So when they did their remodel, they put grooves along the side here so that your Switch would fit in any one of the docks with them on. Personally, recommendation-wise, for functionality and the new comfort and the size and everything, I do think that the compact ones are really nice. But on the flip side, if you're like myself and you have larger hands, you may like the feel of this more. So it really comes down, it's more of a size issue for you. Now they do make an option, which I will throw up on screen here, where you can buy these that actually have a piece that connects in the center. That is a wired option, so you can play it up on the big screen. Now, you are not gaining any functionality by going this direction, outside of the ability to play it like a wired controller. So if you really like the feel of it, and you don't mind using them as a wired controller, it might be a good option to go for. But personally, these are best as a handheld option. Now, an additional thing to consider, I haven't noticed it being a big problem, but my wife and I have both noticed while playing that because any power that's needed for these is being drawn directly from the system, you will notice that your battery drains a little bit quicker while you play. It's not a major issue, but it is something that if you do notice, that is why it's happening. It's because any of the functionality that this needs in terms of, say, power going to the assign button, to the turbo button, or anything else, that is being drawn from the system itself instead of from the Joy-Cons, which have their own battery. So when it comes right down to it, if you are a person who plays portably quite a bit, these are honestly a great option for you. They feel great. They are super comfortable. As I said, personally, I prefer the button style a little bit more to the clicky style. Also, the sticks, if you do run into the stick drift and you are playing handheld quite a bit, I have not run into any problems with stick drift. Now, I've only had these for a couple weeks, but so far they run great. They feel just like a Pro controller would. Now, they do come with an instruction booklet that does give you some additional information on how to use the assign button as well as the turbo functionality. And I will post this up on the screen so that In the future, if you buy a set, say pre-owned, and they don't have the instructions, you'll be able to refer back to this video to actually see exactly how to program in the functions for turbo and assign. Now, as you can see here, you do have the option to see to make sure that the sticks are actually calibrated correctly. You cannot recalibrate these, but if you go to buy a used set, this is a good way to check and make sure that if you're buying them used, that the sticks have not been worn out and there's not any problems with them. As I said, you will not be able to use the recalibration function, but it's a good way to test the sticks and make sure that they're in good shape. Now, when it comes to pricing on these, generally speaking, you are looking at about, I believe it's $50 for a brand new set of these. Or I believe you can buy them with their wired grips so that you can play them plugged into the dock while up on the TV. And I think with that, it runs around $80. Now, in my case, I happen to find these pre-owned. And in both cases, I got them for a little under $30 each. And honestly, for less than the price of a single Joy-Con when buying them pre-owned, I could not be much happier with them. When I'm playing handheld, I will probably have these plugged in at all times. Now, additional caveat with this is that the compact in particular, even though they look like they're close to the size of Joy-Cons, they will not fit while docked on here into a standard case. In my case, I happen to have the Breath of the Wild Special Edition case, and I did check, and while it is one of the larger cases, as you can see, it will not fit that in there. So you will need to keep them disconnected and plug them in when you're actually using them, and just keep your Joy-Cons on you for traveling and keeping them in your case. And there we have the HORI Split Pad Pro as well as the HORI Split Pad Compact. If you're playing primarily on the TV, I don't think these will be much help for you. But if you happen to be a person who takes your Switch on the go with you regularly and you do play in handheld mode, I would say these are worthwhile. They're a good investment and they work great. Plus, their build quality is some of the best I've seen outside of Nintendo's own controllers. If this video helped you and you'd like to see more, please subscribe and hit that like button. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.